What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about the challenge season 36, Double Agents, episode 12. And at least they fixed the timing for the last episode. So now we're back to the typical timing of an episode. You see a daily challenge, you see them talking, deliberating, and you see a crater challenge. But honestly, this entire episode was just a finish of last week's episode, and we only saw the crater challenge, which sort of sucked. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and I feel like I understand why they're reusing creator challenges, but it's kind of boring. Like, I feel like a lot of their challenges aren't even that exciting in the first place, unless it's like a whole brawl, because it's just like, oh, they're both flying around. Big whoop. And then it's less exciting because we've already seen this happen once before. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
thought at least like this creator challenge, it was interesting in the way that, like, okay, it's a double elimination. Let's say goodbye to two of the men kind of thing. But then I don't know. I feel like we predicted it last week, considering that Lolo went last week. So now there's two male rogue agents. So they sort of have to get rid of two guys in order to make the numbers even again. Otherwise, it's just sort of lopsided. And like we literally said last week that it would probably be like Darrell being in the challenge also, because if Nam and Corey aren't being able to be picked, Devin could have picked someone with a gold skull, but like Darrell would be the only person without a gold skull left, and CT would obviously throw himself in. So I don't know. I just felt like after the challenge that we saw, like the crater challenge, then it was just another hour of like people talking and having the same conversation over and over and over again.
Yeah, it was basically just like everyone is mad at CT. Big whoop. Kyle was like, I can't believe he did this to me. Everyone else was like, OMG, Kyle, he's a snake. Like, I just feel like sometimes they just beat stuff to death. And it's like, we do not need 5 minutes of Kyle ranting about how CT lied to him. I don't
No,
need
I'm
that.
like, the spa day was so useless. And I'm like, okay, then in the spa, they have the exact same conversations with Big T, telling Big T, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, shouldn't feel bad. The way CT did this was totally rude, but very wrong. And I'm like, we already had this conversation with like Amber B and Big T and those people. Like, now we have to see Corey telling Big T the exact same thing other people already told Big T. Like, I feel like the viewers were on the same page that, like, oh yeah, CT, what he said and like verbalizing what he said was totally wrong.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where maybe they felt like they needed to convince us that CT was wrong. Either that or they wanted, like, we, the viewer, to know that everyone in the house was basically on Big T's side, but also like we already kind of knew that everyone would be on Big T's side because everyone kind of disliked CT. The only person who really seemed to like CT was Devin, and he went home in the Crater Challenge. So
They just got to spell it out for us word for word, I guess. So we go into this double elimination. I'm personally wondering, like, did they just do a double elimination? Like, security breach, friends, because Lolo went home last episode? Like, I'm probably on the page that this was not planned by production. You know, usually for shows like The Amazing Race or Survivor Australia, when they have non elimination days, legs, tribal councils, it's planned and it's pre planned. So they know, like, okay, on race day 3, 5, 7, it's non elimination. For Survivor Tribal Council days in Survivor Australia, they do non elimination ones sometimes. So I feel like that's pre planned. I feel like for this, it was not pre planned and they just did it to get the men and the women's numbers back to equal. So then it's not like a weird, we have two extra guys or one extra guy now, we have to get rid of more people. But I feel like because it wasn't planned and they just told the people in the crater, that it's sort of unfair. And I feel like they wish they would have told the people that, oh, it's going to be a double elimination today before they went in to go vote, because then you could at least strategize around this twist. And I'm probably sure, you know, the Big Brother Alliance, those people maybe would have tried to split their votes on like Devin and someone else that they don't really want. So then Josh would have been safe and he wouldn't have been thrown into the crater. But Josh probably would have been picked anyway by someone in the crater, but I feel like at least if it were told to the people, then you could have strategized around it.
I also feel like there should have been two double agents because it's like CT and Big T had double the power because they got to choose two people to send in. And so, like, I feel like they might have had this idea as like a contingency plan if they ever needed it. Because I feel like a lot of times shows like this will have a contingency plan where, like, oh, if like we're getting too many medical evacuations, then we'll change this, this, and this just because I think Survivor did that on Co Wrong. Like they changed stuff around because they had 3 medevacs. I just think it's one of those things where they have it as a backup plan and didn't expect to need to use it, but they totally did need to use it because so many girls were getting injured. And I guess also part of what annoys me is like Nam like almost immediately was taken out for health reasons and I was like you didn't need to have this double elimination because now you have a rogue agent who's a girl anyway.
Yeah, I felt like because CT got to like choose the pairings for this week and him and Big T were the double agents, it just felt like too much power and this was the most powerful double agent status that you could have gotten for a reason that wasn't even planned into the TV show. Like that wasn't set on day one, similar to Ashley coming back as probably like a contingency plan, like you're saying. Oh, they saw that a lot of the women are getting DQ'd, medevaced, kicked out kind of thing. So, oh, let's bring Ashley back. But like, that's sort of unfair. So I just feel like CT and Big T having so much power when this wasn't planned just is very unfair, also.
Yeah, I just think in general, the challenge doesn't seem to really care about fairness. So it seems like they kind of just do whatever they want, and if it benefits the vets that they like, so be it.
Yeah, literally, this is probably the production's dream because you get CT getting the most powerful double agent status of the entire show thus far, gets to pick the 2 people that get to go in against the 2 compromised agents based on the number of votes. So Josh and Nany are the second compromised agents because they got the second highest amount of votes this episode, which, like I said, if the people could strategize, if they were told this at the deliberation, or maybe the double agents were told this or something before people went in to go vote, would have made it a lot more interesting so people could strategize around it. But then CT gets to choose. He asks Devin who Devin wants to go in against, and then CT puts himself in against Josh, which that pairing honestly makes sense. You know, CT is 100% going to go in. Production probably loves that Devin picked Darrell to go against, which I'm like, okay, you know, good for Devin for not being like, not playing scared, not trying to purposefully pick someone that's like super weak or someone that he wants to go against. Like that's easy to beat. But I feel like pick it, you know, like Darrell's a 4-time challenge champ. Like, good for him for picking a 4-time challenge champ to go against. I feel like personally, maybe not the best option. Devin has said that he picked Darrell because Darrell is bad at puzzles and he was the only non-gold skull person left. So I'm like, okay, you know, makes sense. But I feel like low key, Fessy may have been the better option here because I feel like if you're heavier, it's going to be harder to do the swinging on the ropes to get your puzzle pieces. And Fessy from like Big Brother and everything, he's probably not the best and he isn't the best at puzzles.
Yeah, I feel like I felt bad for Devin because he picked who he got to go against and he still ended up getting eliminated. So, like, yikes. But I also feel like for a lot of people that was like best case scenario because now Darrell gets a gold skull. But also, it feels very Devin-esque that in going home he kind of screwed everyone else over because now Darrell is going to be in the final 2, and I feel like that's going to screw some people over. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Literally, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we let CT get a gold skull. And no one was like, oh, we let Devin get a gold skull, like who has more challenge championships than Darrell right now. So I'm like, it's 4-3 with challenge champs. And everyone was so scared. CT's got a skull. Like, why did we let this happen? And I'm like, everyone is sleeping on Darrell right now. But I guess good for a viewer's standpoint if you don't like Devin and Josh that much, that like both of them got sent home on the same episode. Also, you know, Devin wasn't really that far behind Darrell, so like good for Devin. He was up there. And I feel like looking at this puzzle, it was definitely probably that 7 piece puzzle from Survivor where Spencer memorized that puzzle, right? And we have this puzzle DIY on our channel, and like this tanagram you can literally memorize and get it in like 30 seconds, and that's what Spencer did on Survivor, and he like won that immunity challenge in like 30 seconds after he got to the puzzle cuz you memorized it. And I'm like, dang, these people could have memorized it, and like Devin could have won if they like practiced this beforehand, cuz it's one of those things that it's just the same thing every time.
Yeah, CT said that he does tangrams with his son all the time, which is how he ended up like being able to do it so quickly. And I just feel like that's one of those things where the challenge champs probably aren't thinking about memorizing puzzles. I feel like everyone is so into like, oh yeah, I'm gonna weightlift every day. I'm gonna do this, this, and this, but they won't do anything to prepare for the puzzle side of things. Which is funny because they're always like, oh, I'm so bad at puzzles, and I'm like, guys, puzzles are just as easy to get good at as like weightlifting. Maybe even easier because there's no way you can accidentally like throw out your back while doing puzzles unless you're doing them very wrong.
Yeah, like the slide puzzle, there is strategy behind how to complete a slide puzzle, which we also have a DIY on our channel for. So I just thought that was like so funny. If Spencer was in that challenge, he could have totally beasted the puzzle portion of it if he just memorized that tanagram. I thought it was also funny when Darrell had his confessional and he's like, the tangerine puzzle. I was like, oh, that's so cute, but like so wrong.
I saw that and I literally face palmed because I'm like, you don't even know the name of the puzzle. Sometimes, like the challenge people, I'm just like, you're really dumb. Like not knowing the square root of 196, thinking a tangram is called a tangerine. It's fine.
8 times 9, Alyssa. I think Ashley Mitchell, before she was eliminated twice, in one of her like ending confessionals, she was talking about like puzzles, or even on other seasons, she talks about how she has puzzle apps on her phone. So maybe that's the way to go, because I'm sure you can download like puzzle apps for on your phone for free and like do some easy puzzles on there, or even multiplication tables if you're going to do and make it to a trivia challenge. If they're going to do that. Or if you're going to get in a fight with Devin, maybe you need to start practicing your multiplication tables.
Yeah, I just feel like it's one of those things where people on the challenge definitely emphasize the physical more than anything else, which is fine, but also don't act like it's impossible to do puzzles.
Yeah, so I thought something else was interesting. In the after show, I believe Devin said one reason that he didn't want to pick Fessy was because apparently people on the show are trying to keep Fessy out of an elimination so that he can't win the elimination and then he can't switch partners. So then he's going to be stuck with Anissa in the finals. And then therefore, Anissa and Fessy won't win the finals, even if Fessy is super strong. That kind of line of thinking. But I felt like that was sort of weird. And I was sort of like, oh, why would Devin think like that, when I feel like in the challenge, Devin has been sort of selfish so far, not throwing him and Gabby in when they were the double agents, being like a solo player, all of that. So I feel like if you're thinking selfishly and what you have to do in a game like this, who cares? If Fessy does win, and I think maybe Devin could have beat Fessy in this challenge because Fessy can't do puzzles, then Fessy's gone and then someone else is stuck with Anissa, I guess. But like, I don't know. It just seems odd that you wouldn't throw Fessy in. But if any other like person wins a challenge, so like maybe Casey gets thrown in again and has to defend her skull, she wins. Maybe she picks Fessy again. They were already partners before, and then someone else is stuck with Anissa. So it just seems odd that you're not going to throw this pair in because you don't want Fessy to switch, but someone else could steal Fessy.
Yeah, I think people were kind of like not thinking along those lines just because a lot of the partners seem to be like really happy with their partnership. Like you said, Casey could steal Fessy back, but it seems like she and Leroy are like tight and don't want to end up switching. So I guess it's one of those things where is everyone who would theoretically pick Fessy in a relationship they think is stronger than whatever they would have with Fessy. So like Casey wouldn't pick Fessy because she's with Leroy. Cam probably wouldn't pick Fessy. Like who would pick him? Who?
Miss Gabby.
Did Gabby even really like him?
Yeah, they were smooching. Remember in that bed
I
scene?
know, but like, I thought she said that she likes to keep work and play separate. Because
I think
wasn't the
she
whole
said
point of
she
that Lolo and Nam were messed up because they tried to be both romantically and like, what's the word? They tried to
partner.
be
Yeah.
romantically involved while also being like business partners, quote unquote business partners. I feel like that came up. Or I'm just
Yeah.
making that up. Who
Maybe.
knows?
I feel like we saw her say that if she won the Gold Skull that week that they were the double agents, she would have picked Fessy to change partners with.
Yeah, I don't know though.
Yeah, so could be, numerous women might pick Fessy and then someone else could get stuck with Anissa. So it just seems odd that like you wouldn't throw Fessy into an elimination, but also like throw Fessy in against Darrell versus CT. Why are you letting all of these big boys make it to the final? Like there's too many strong men here. You got to like get rid of some of them.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's kind of too late to start getting rid of the strong men. And so now a lot of the girls are just, I'm going to try to team up with the strongest man I can get. So,
Yeah, considering only Corey is left without a gold skull. And for the women, only, I guess, one person also would be left without a gold skull because there's 3 women left. Two of them will go in next week probably. And so one will get a skull. Then it's similar like Corey. Only one woman is left to battle for the skull. So technically, like 4 of the people in the roster right now for men and women are like safe and they're going to make it to the final.
yeah. So, I think it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening in that respect. Just because I feel like this week had a big partner change up, and I feel like next week might have another big partner change up. So,
Speaking of partner switch ups, we see that CT and Darrell both win their challenges. They qualify for the final, which is very bad for the rest of the people. Maybe less bad for the women since they'll get a strong partner in the final. Sort of bad for the men, I feel like. But CT gets to pick and change partners first, which I'm not really sure what was the reasoning behind this. Why didn't Darrell get to pick first? But like Darrell would probably stay with Amber B, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But it just seems odd that CT got to pick first, even though he competed in the challenge second.
well, he was also the double agent, so I feel like
Mm.
that might have something to do with it. So,
We need these rules. This double elimination wasn't planned. Why did CT go first? I guess it doesn't really matter because Darrell chooses to stay with Amber B anyways. So if Darrell went first, he probably still would have chose Amber B. But CT goes first, and without even thinking of it, TJ is like, CT, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And yeah, not even thinking, CT like bursts out and he's like, Cam, come down here. I've wanted you since the first day I ever said no to you. I've been thinking about this day and like regretting it the whole time I was in this house. And I was like, oh no, I feel so bad for Big T. Like CT just starts screaming for Cam and like you can see it on her face. I feel like she was so shocked and she didn't really see it coming.
yeah, I feel like I was talking last week about how much I love Big T and CT's relationship, and I feel like that all just crumbled in like 10 seconds. Just because I feel like even if CT really did want Cam, I would have thought that because of his relationship with Big T, he would have been a little bit more restrained about it. Maybe like the adrenaline of the situation got to his head. I don't know. But it was just, this was kind of the big drama for the episode was CT picking Cam and like the way that he picked Cam. So,
100%. I feel like if you're CT, you can't fault CT for picking a better partner and playing the game selfishly. Like we said, CT wants to win the final. He doesn't think that he can win the final with Big T by his side. So you can't fault him for that line of thinking. I feel like where he goes wrong is like saying all of this stuff that he said out loud. But honestly, I feel like we've seen this kind of pattern with him all season where like in the mud hall brawl-esque challenge, him and he's sort of like really down about Big T. They're never going to win against Cam and Kyle. And I feel like we've seen him sort of smack talk her in front of her face, behind her back throughout the season. But like when they win challenges, like we saw them win last week, then he's all like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you and whatnot. But,
I
he's
mean, I
still sort
think
of.
both of those things can be true. It can be true that Big T is not capable of running the final and would make a bad partner in the final, but also he is proud of her for when she does do well. But it's like the one challenge that they did is not exactly comparable to the final. So,
Yeah, you can't fault him for picking a better partner because that's the name of the game. Just the way he did it was not the way to
bad.
go about switching your partners, 100%. Even if you hated a person, I think, why would you embarrass them like that?
Yeah. But like we said, I feel like the rest of this episode was just the same conversation over and over about Big T and CT, where everyone was like, he didn't have to do it like that. You're great, Big T, blah, 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 blah. It all culminates in this like conversation between Big T and CT that just was the dumbest conversation ever because CT started so well where he was like, you don't need me. I'm always going to be here for you. But then he goes off with, you're never going to be able to win the final. And I'm like, you could have just stopped while you were ahead.
Yo,
Like,
literally, Big T was spitting facts at the beginning, like telling CT what you did and what you said was wrong. Like, you really hurt my feelings. And I was like, okay, yes, Big T, speak your truth. This is really good. You're getting to tell CT what was wrong, and he's listening. And then, like, you're right. He's just has to ruin it and said, you're not ready to run the final. And I'm like, SMH, this was such like an emotional moment before this. And then CT is blaming Big T. Like, if I lose $1 million because of this, you're going to like hurt my child. My son won't get this money. And I'm like, yo, this was 0 to 100 real quick. Like, why did you have to say those things? Some things are better kept in your brain. Like, you shouldn't have said that to her face. Maybe, behind her back, if you wanted to tell people that, like, sure, I guess, but that's still really rude. Like, to her face when she's trying to, like, flesh out the beef that you have and, like, she wants you to apologize. I'm like, a 0 out of 10. That was just so wrong.
yeah, it seems like a lot of people need to like learn how to apologize because I feel like this whole season we've been seeing these grown ass adults not knowing how to apologize to people about things, and it's just like they always feel like they have to justify, and it's just like you can just say you're sorry and just be done with it. Say you're sorry and move on.
Truly, like I thought in this conversation, really good for Big T for standing her ground. I'm like, if I were in there, I'd probably just start crying and being like, this person is so mean, and just like not be able to form any sentences. So I'm glad that Big T didn't let CT like walk all over her and like just blame her for losing and blame her for losing $1 million and everything. And it's like, yo, you and Big T just won the daily challenge, and now you're saying like you're costing my family money. I'm like, that is just very uncalled for.
Yeah, the whole thing could have been handled so much better.
That's like the main part of the episode. We see Kyle picks Nani as his partner, and then Corey gets Gabby. So Gabby's going home next week, obviously. Big T and Nam get together, and I was so looking forward to this partnership, but the challenge universe has to stab us in the back one more time with all of the good players getting DQ'd this season. Nam, like we saw the past I guess Nam, we saw the past few episodes, he was having some back problems, strained it on the digging challenge where they did that like totem puzzle, and he goes to the hospital to get checked out. He comes back and he's like, I'm ready for this next daily challenge. And I just thought that was so mean. Like, the doctors at the hospital know that they were going to DQ him and medically evacuate him. Why would you let him go back to the house, tell Big T that he's ready to run the next daily challenge just to pull him before the daily starts? I'm like, this sucks. Why?
They did the same thing with Liv too, and I'm like, it really doesn't take that long to figure out that like, oh, her arm is broken. It doesn't take that long to figure out, oh, there's a disc in his back that slipped or whatever. So just why?
It's just so depressing because I feel like, okay, if they knew Nam was maybe going to go, maybe they could have got Nam checked out earlier. Maybe this was the point in time where Nam asked to be taken to the hospital and production didn't like force him to go to the hospital. But I feel like if someone is having this persistent problem, why do you keep dragging it on? Make him go back into the house and make him like see everyone again. Like, it was just so mean, I feel like. And also, if they knew Nam was potentially leaving, maybe they wouldn't have done the double elimination, or maybe Nam would have left earlier and then that would have counted for the double elimination. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. This whole thing was so poorly done, I feel like. And I feel like part of the reason the Nam thing stretched out so long is because they needed like more drama for this episode, because this episode really like they had one dramatic thing that they really milked for all it was worth.
Straight up, they milked this for 2 episodes where they could have maybe made this one like 1 hour, or maybe made last week 2 hours instead of having like two 90-minute episodes. So Nam leaves, he gets kicked out right before they start this next daily challenge. And I'm like, ugh, this is so sad. You know, Nam is rid of Lolo, who this partnership has been toxic all season. He doesn't even get a chance to go in the crater. He doesn't get a skull. And I'm like, dang, this is the worst timeline because Nam was just about to be in a new partnership. We could see what he could do. He could have gotten his gold skull in a men's challenge coming up. And I'm just so sad because I would have loved to see Nam play solo.
Yeah, and I wonder if Nam will ever come back because his first experience was so bad.
But he said on the after show that he's like 80% better and he would come back. So hopefully, but you know, I feel like with production wanting the best drama value, if they are going to bring Lolo back, which maybe Lolo is on like the do not ever ask to come back to this show again because of like everything that happened and whatnot. But maybe I could see for like a rival season, production would be evil enough to put Nam and Lolo back together.
Yikes.
Watch next season would be rivals, and then they would stick those two together. So we'll just never see Nam solo or like without Lolo, or maybe a team that would be cool to see Nam on. I just want to see him perform and do some challenges and go in the crater or the final elimination. Like,
especially because they made such a big deal about how much of a physical threat he was, and it's like we never saw that because he never went into the crater and he never won a single challenge.
I'm just so sad. I feel like all of the super physical people that like we were all super excited to see before the season started, like Natalie, Lolo, Nam, all of these people got DQ'd and kicked out of the game. So it's like, dang, I think, you know, Natalie and Lolo, if they made it to the final, Natalie had her gold skull, they could have rocked that final. I think Nam could have gotten his skull also in these next few weeks before the final. And I'm like, dang, we missed out on some serious competitors.
Yeah, I feel like we just missed out on so much because of DQs. And it's like, I get that they wanted the challenge to be physical, but like, don't make your show worse because because people get hurt. Just. Speaking of challenges, I'm really not entirely sure what is going on. They explained the challenge that was going to happen, but never really showed it at the end of this episode. And basically the challenge is they're in this huge ass warehouse and they call it what, like the fright something. Basically they're going to be doing scary shit all night long. But they never really said what that scary stuff is going to be. So I'm just kind of confused.
I thought this looked really cool from like the preview of it. We got like blue balled of what was going to happen, cliffhanger again, which I guess it's good because next week we'll start with the challenge and then we'll go into the regular episode format. But like, just seeing the challenge and it looks so cool. Everyone is like trapped in those little like barbed wire fences and they're going to do the weird stuff all night. I'm like, dang, I just want to watch it now. You know, why did you have to cut off when everyone is like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Like, what are we going to do, TJ? This doesn't look like fun. Like, I want to watch it. Don't feel like I would want to participate in it though, because it does not look like fun to be there first person, but to watch. it feels like maybe like an escape room or something. I also wasn't really too sure of what was going on. But I
It
think
seemed like it was going to be a haunted house type thing, and it's just they have to not get scared? Question mark.
because it was like the first person, like the slowest or the quickest time to get out was like the winner, is what I thought. So I was like, oh, escape room. But yeah, I feel like at the start of next week's episode, they're probably going to replay the last 10 minutes of this episode to re explain the challenge, just in case people didn't watch the end of last week's episode. So basically, I guess it doesn't really matter if we don't know what it is fully right now, because they're probably going to have to re explain it.
Yeah. I just felt like in general, I complained earlier about these episodes in the middle feeling like filler episodes, but this one really felt like a filler episode. Because, like, you basically had half the content that you normally do, because instead of having a daily challenge and the crater, we just had the crater, and then they had the random ass spa day, and then everyone was yelling about the same stuff.
Yeah, not a fan really of this episode. I think, like we said, they could have combined it with last week's episode and maybe like did a 2-for-1 and maybe a 2 hour episode instead of a 90 minutes, and then made this week a 1 hour episode, or like skip the week like they did in December or January. They just randomly skipped a week. So I don't know. I'm like 90 minutes of the same conversation over and over. I could have heard it once and then we would all be on the same page. Big T is mad at CT. The house is mad at CT. Kyle is mad at CT. XYZ, we're done. Let's go to the next daily.
Yeah. So, I guess I'm kind of excited for next week just so that we can figure out what the heck is happening with that challenge. But, eh.
I'm excited for next week to see that challenge. It looks really cool. And next week is probably going to be a women's elimination. And because there's one women's gold skull left and Big T is the rogue agent, it's probably going to be Gabby and Nani going in there, unless they throw in someone with a gold skull. But considering Devin didn't pick someone with a gold skull to go in against today, and all of the men's eliminations that we saw have been gold skull versus non-gold skull matchups afterwards, I feel like they're going to send in the two non-gold skull holders, unless you just want like Nani or Gabby pissed off at you for not sending them in and maybe like bar them from getting their skull. But it seems like the way that things are going, everyone will have a chance to get their skull, which sort of sucks. I wish they did a purge. Just kick everyone else out after they get 5.
Yeah, it would be more fun if they did a purge, but I also get why they didn't, especially once it became clear that like there were so many more like girls than guys who had like an opportunity to get a skull, just because it's like when like half the girls get medically evacuated, then it becomes a lot easier to get into the final as a woman than as a man, and then it's a mess. So
Yeah. Next time, they just got to stop hurting their people in challenges.
yeah. So I guess we'll see you guys next week. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Did you shed a tear over Big T and CT breaking up like I did? What do you think is going to happen next week? Do you think this is a haunted house or an escape room? As always, we love to hear from you, and we'll